And we are live with Texas Joe, who is on the road. You can tell by looking at him. He's on the road. This is a surprise live, guys. I didn't know. So this is a podcast interview. We will do the audio podcast on Sunday this week, but we're recording now. And then I said, hey, dude, you want to go live? He's like, sure, why not? My day's been totally turned upside down. So let's start with the basics, though. Who is Texas Joe, and what are we talking about here?
So as you would expect, I am a guy from Texas. I am the host of the Insurgency Knitting Circle podcast, and the show Inception kind of came about in this at the spring workshop of the Survival podcast where I met you guys. A little bit after that, three of my buddies and I decided to start the show, and yeah, it's just become kind of a full-time, part-time project for me. So I've been cataloging. Well, I guess let me back up. The other guys kind of got really busy with their own projects, and so it just kind of got left to me. So shout out to Pat from Uncensored Tactical and Oxman from Smurf It Up, and Captain Jack out in North Carolina. He's doing some big stuff. So. But those are my buddies. They helped me. I guess all of us kind of chipped in to start Insurgency Knitting Circle podcast, and yeah, so I've kind of taken it by the horn and ran with it. We do events like you guys do out in Tennessee. So we actually were talking before this, and we had weekends, or we had events on the same weekend, which coincided with Float Fest.
So. Yeah, that was a great. So we're gonna compare notes next year before we schedule all our stuff.
So interesting fact: Patrick Rohrman has already asked me to schedule it a different weekend than the Living Free in Tennessee event.
I already know when my weekend is, in case that helps.
Right. So since I'm the new kid and little kid on the block, I'm just gonna have to yield to Jack and Float Fest and Living Free in Tennessee and everybody else who's already an established name in the podcasting game. But I love being here and being part of it. So
true story. My spring workshop would have been a fall workshop, but Jack has a fall workshop, and I realized we had enough audience crossover that it was a good idea to do the spring workshop. And then he announced one spring, I'm not going to do a spring workshop anymore. And I emailed him. I'm like, so mine is scheduled now, and you can come and speak. And we did this whole thing, and he came to my first one. But
nice.
I was like, I'm taking that space the minute I see it, because I had been wanting to do a workshop for years at that point. I didn't know about his workshop until I did. But hey, everybody joining the live stream, thanks. Let folks know in our networks that we're live, because this is a surprise live, which meant I didn't promote it on social. So nobody really knows except for if they follow me on Telegram, because I managed to get that out right then. Okay, so tell me first, what is the Insurgency Knitting Circle podcast? What is it all about? What problem are you solving? How does, tell me about that.
So I guess our mission statement is, I don't really like the way that I see the world and that I see society going. So I'm just trying to contribute in a positive manner. Teach people to be more self-reliant, more self-sufficient. Instead of calling a guy, like Uncle Jack says, we used to do everything ourselves instead of calling a guy. That's really what I'm trying to do. My path, I guess, to enlightenment and preparedness started about 10 years ago. And had you told me 10 years ago that now at this point in my life, I'd be a homesteader and a homeschooler and all of the crazy extremist things that are shunned against, in social media and the court of public opinion, I would have told you that you're crazy. But hey, here I am. So we talk about everything from, animal husbandry and, fixing your own cars to a little overlap with the Uncivilized Man podcast, Trevor Boehm. So I do a lot to pour into the guys and the chicks around my show. We also, like I said, we do live events. Those are fantastic every time we do them. So I'm just trying to change the world one mind at a time. I know that seems kind of like a big scope of work, but I use homesteading as a gateway drug because people think that homesteading is sexy. So if I see a group of really attractive females, I'm like, hey, you guys clearly work out. Not hitting on you, but do you eat eggs? And they're like, yep. I'm like, you want to try some of the best eggs you've ever had in your entire life? And they're like, yep. And then that leads to, hey, I've got a bunch of animals. Hey, I've got a homestead. And it's like, why do you do that? And so you just chip away, right? You just chip away at that compartmentalization, that consumerism. You're like, hey, maybe a garden in your backyard isn't bad. I spent 3 or 4 months as a project manager for a garden company that installs $250,000 gardens, and so I know how to build some really beautiful gardens. And normally I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of this place? And they're like, yep, I follow them on Instagram. I'm like, well, I used to work for them. So you just find an end. You figure out a way to relate to somebody, and then just kind of drop those little liberty seeds in their mind and watch it grow. So
we should totally do a product called Liberty Seeds. It's a little packet with little statements you can say that aren't really necessarily up in your face.
I love it.
Kind of fun. Maybe we need an alliance among our podcasts to do that.
Yes. Freedom Seeds Guild.
Coming this Christmas. Liberty Seeds.
I love it.
Fun in every stocking.
So yeah, that's pretty. I don't know if I answered your question properly or not, but yeah,
there's no rules here. Like this, the cool thing about an interview is it's just a discussion, right? So you made me think of how I found out I was a prepper.
Okay, yeah.
So I had spent I've been homesteading here since 2007, really, and I just fell into it on accident and started learning how to do stuff, and the act of living in the country made me not like to drive to the city to get supplies. And so I soon came to realize the smart way to live for me was to have enough things on hand that if I needed something, it was here and I didn't have to go there without that being part of my normal plan. Like if I'm going to go sing in choir, then I can also hit the grocery store or whatever, hit the feed store, whatever it is that I need to do in town. And I had developed a deep pantry. I was canning food that I was growing, like all of those things that we do. And then one day I was canning tomatoes and I wanted to listen to a podcast that was longer than the Cato Institute's podcast, which is only 15 minutes. And I found this guy talking about wild edible plants, 7 wild edible plants you should have in your yard, Jack Spirko. And I play it. And I didn't look at the name of the podcast, the survival podcast, right? I'm listening to it and I'm like, wow, this guy's an anarchist and he doesn't know it. That's interesting. And blah, blah, blah. Turns out he totally knew it. And then I listened to another podcast and I'm like, oh shit, I'm a prepper. I had no idea. Like my friends have told me for years, you should target prepper networks. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what's a prepper? I don't even know. And then I just found myself finding it amusing that the label prepper is even a thing in our world.
I resent that term. With a passion that can only be expressed through interpretive dance and lots of cursing.
Can you do the interpretive dance in your car though?
I can't. Well, next time.
Next time we'll be in the studio. You can do your interpretive dance. That'll be bad.
With the kilt.
With the kilt.
So surprisingly, at a TSP event, people actually looked kind of funny at my kilt. So
that just happened. It's funny because I get the occasional kilt here too, and nobody cares.
Nice.
It's more like questions about what it's like to wear a kilt rather than what's up with the kilt. Because I'm pretty sure Daniel
wearing a kilt feels like freedom.
Yeah, does it? So you obviously don't get the leg chaff. There's a whole leg chaff thing that ladies need to deal with. It's not fun.
Sure. No, I do. I get it.
You get it?
So yeah.
They make like bicycle shorts to deal with that in case anybody listening to this has that problem and hasn't solved it yet. Absolutely.
Okay, so after TSP then.
What?
After TSP, then what?
That was it. Then I was like, wow, I'm a prepper, and I just embraced it fully. That was it. Nice. I was like, I'll just call myself a prepper. Fine. Preppers, because before that, my perception of preppers were what we all think of that the media has spun to us, right?
Yep.
Which is 90,000 pounds of dried beans in a cave in the woods, hidden because somebody's going to come steal it from you. And I don't know. It was just like the Y2K thing was my impression of preppers. And once I knew I was a prepper, I was like, no, this is just the logical way to live. Especially if you are rural, it's the logical way to live. And
Absolutely.
and it's not even that weird. Like before we started this, you and I were talking about I've decided to deepen my pantry by another 6 months. And the thing is, living on a homestead, right? You get these cycles of food off your homestead, and it's just a natural thing. So you'll end up with half a year's supply of, I don't know, canned beans or something, green beans. Having just made fun of beans, I have to bring up beans again. Or a freezer full of pork because it's pork season, and then by later in the year that's gone, but it's time to process lamb, so then you're replacing it. So it's a cycle anyway. But we went through all of the stuff that we might need that I hadn't thought of, like extra light switches in case a light switch breaks or stuff like that. And if I want to expand from 6 months of toilet paper, I need to buy more toilet paper, right? To a year's worth of toilet paper if that's what I want to do. And I looked at this list. There's no way I can buy it all. So the next thing is, okay, what things can I do without anyway? And what's more important to have a backup of? For me right now, a light switch is more important than toilet paper because I can think of 10 ways to clean myself after using the bathroom that don't involve toilet paper. But having to jury rig a light switch seems a lot harder to me. How do you approach those sorts of things?
So it's interesting that you bring up the light switch thing because while I'm laid off from oil and gas, I'm actually doing handyman work. So um, I've found that if I'm going to keep a lot of stuff around, which I do, I have to have a lot of room to store it. But keeping extra plumbing supplies and keeping extra electrical supplies, and then we buy 2 tons of food for the animals at a time, and we'll get to that later, but we've got tons of animals here on the farm, and it's just if you're gonna do it, you're gonna need a lot of room, and that's what a lot of people, you know, I guess it's a challenge that people hit. They're like, hey, I need all this stuff, but then they're just living in a house that's full of stuff, and they're walking through little pathways,
Yeah,
because
that's
they've
not
got
good.
stuff all stacked up or whatever. But it for us, we have a major Ren fair of like a facility by our house. So for 2 months out of the year, you go to town during the week, get what you need, and then squirrel everything back to your house, and you don't leave for 3 days. So from Friday to Monday, you don't even leave the house. So it's
Because
like
all the
little
crazy
preparedness.
Medicare people.
Well, it's just because we get a town that's our population's like 20-30,000, and this one place will get 50 to 70,000 people a day.
Yeah.
So it's like the infrastructure, while it's improving, isn't all that great. When it takes you, because we live 20-30 minutes from a small little grocery store and a tractor supply. Well, when this Ren Fair is in town, a 20 or 30-minute trip there and back takes an hour and a half each way.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth it. We
No.
find ourselves going to totally different towns to get lumber and parts and all this stuff. And that, or like I said, buying everything we think we're going to need for the week during the week, and then just closing and locking the gate and just saying to hell with it, we're not leaving. So
how many heartbeats do you have on your homestead?
uh I would have to do an inventory. Right now, I'm battling predators.
Oh
I've
boy.
had 30 to 40 chickens taken out in the last 3 to 4 weeks since my homesteading event. So, and it just seems like nothing I do makes a difference.
Yeah.
So I went out last night and I got everybody that was still alive, which is 3 roosters, 1 laying hen, and half a dozen babies. And during my event, I had 40 something laying hens productive in the coop, and then 2 or 3 dozen babies. And it's just I've something is eating my lunch, and this is the worst year that we've had in this 6-7 years that we've been on our homestead. And
Hmm.
it's been a character building year. We've lost goats and everything. But
Yow.
so we
Is it
have
is it all the predators?
no. So it started out, we had a possum, and so I dealt with the possum, and then I took, within a matter of a week and a half, I took two 6.5 foot rat snakes and a possum out, and then we kept just having a decline, and I realized that, because baby chickens are kind of stupid. Chickens are kind of stupid in general. They
Yeah.
smell like food. They act like food. They walk around like food. Like everything projects, hey, eat me to everybody else. So I go out at night for my baby chickens and make sure they're shooed into the coop. And so I was grabbing my chickens, and when you grab them, they make this huge fuss and all this racket and everything. And I got the last one in. I had my headlamp on or whatever. So I was looking at the ground because I was picking up my chickens. So I look up, and it's, I mean, it's June, right?
Yeah.
May, June. It looked like I had Christmas lights in the trees. And I'm
Hi.
like, okay, blammo, blammo, blammo. I'm like, I know what's killing my chickens now, but I did not go scorched earth with my chicken run, and
Yeah.
I had some trees so that it would give the birds some shade because it gets hot here in Texas, especially during the summertime, and those girls need some shade. And one of the trees that comes down into my chicken run. So I've got a solar powered chicken coop that opens and closes automatically with a car battery or whatever. But I have two parallel runs. So I just switch what door opens for a couple of weeks until they defoliate the runs. So the one run has like a mature silver elm tree in it, and
Yeah.
that thing had 5 raccoons in it that I could see, and I'm like, the coop closes automatically at night, so the chickens go in when it gets to dusk, and I thought everybody was safe, but they switched their hunting pattern to start
Yeah.
hunting late in the afternoon when it's hot and sunny, which animals, predators, don't normally do. It's they hunt at dawn and dusk or in the middle of the night, and they just ravage everything. But these guys have figured out to switch their hunting patterns to mid-afternoon to exploit the weakness in my system, and they have been eating my lunch. So
Yeah,
now I walk.
raccoons have totally screwed me up one year too, until I got
Yeah,
a dog that hates them.
yeah. So I have dogs, but they're not that type of dog.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, my German Shepherd, I don't know how she learned this, but she would, if she saw a raccoon, it was a dead raccoon. She would go up and
good
just like
dog.
do the head shake thing to break its
Yeah,
neck. She hated them. I don't know how she learned the hatred of them, but after she decided she hated raccoons, the raccoon problem basically went away.
nice, good
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah. But the problem is once one raccoon finds your chickens, all the raccoons get the memo.
Yep,
Yep.
yep. So in addition to the raccoons, we have goats.
Yeah.
We have rabbits. We have horses. Let's see, what else do we have? We have a cow. We have a little ultra black or little black Angus cow. We had two, but one of them just didn't make it.
Yeah.
I think that they were weaned too early, but the guy I got them from is going to make good on that. So eventually we'll have two cows. We've got a mess of fish in the ponds and in the aquaponic systems. We've got 3 dogs. So Pat at Uncensored Tactical actually lives on our farm. We moved him July 4th of last year from Florida to Texas. So um, he lives there with his Dutch Shepherd. So we've got a Dutch Shepherd and 2 labs.
Yeah.
And just all the little accoutrements that go along. Like my kids love animals. So my daughter's got parakeets and fish and all this other stuff. So yeah, we've given up on ducks completely. Ducks, we just raise ducks to feed predators. It's just,
Here's one
we
from
have a
John
10 acre.
Willis. Speaking of John Willis,
Yeah,
his problems go away with fences and dogs. We use fences to keep the dogs in and dogs to keep the predators out.
correct, correct.
Yep.
So yeah, it just, yeah, I don't
The
know.
fences are a thing. Like we've been gradually getting better at fences here, and it has made a difference. Although there's something in the woods now around us, so we'll
Yeah,
see. I'm gonna
yeah.
try that whole peanut butter on the electric fence thing and see if that discourages traffic in the area. Looks like you're not the only one having raccoon problems, though. Christy says Had raccoon problems this year, first time in 8 years of having chickens.
Yep. So
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of using electric fence controllers.
Yeah.
And so I'd say I've probably got 1,000 feet, maybe 1,000 feet, maybe a couple of 100 feet of fencing on my chicken coop. But I like to use like a good, strong, one
Yeah.
jewel, 10-mile fence controller, really light them up.
Yeah.
So, but then, hey, violence is always an option too. So I do enjoy a good application of 12 gauge Texas target load. I've been blasted. Anything that looks like a raccoon nest up in the trees, it gets 2 shots of Texas target load.
Yeah.
And if you're moving or you show me your eyes at night, feel sorry for you, son, because you're going to get smoked.
Okay. So if we're going to sneak up on your house, don't do it at night where the raccoons are. Noted.
I mean, if you're fool enough to sneak up on a house where me and Pat from Uncensored Tactical live, I feel sorry for you. You just don't want to live very much. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Christy's saying it takes a while to afford good fencing. For me, it hasn't been the afford part. It's been the installing part. It's like one little section takes us days because of the terrain we have here. But and then finding people to hire is just a challenge. Of course, John Willis would tell me I need a tractor, and he's right.
Well, I mean, I have a tractor, and it comes in use a lot. Our terrain is flat, like a fence, or like a paved road. Our thing is, we like to use a 60-inch cattle panel from Tractor Supply, and then 4x4 treated posts, and every 4x4 post costs $25.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, we use cedar trees.
I like to. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. See, we don't have an abundance of those in this area. A few hours away in the hill country, they've got a ton of them, but it just, homesteading is a luxury sport for sure. It's not anything you're gonna do. Like, I was joking with the farmer in the doctor's office the other day, and I said, I think that successful farmers and homesteaders are the ones who have managed to keep financial ruin at bay longer than everybody else. So.
Yeah, you definitely need to keep the finances in mind when you're doing it. Like, the spreadsheet is your friend. We've just added 12 sheep here, and they're immediately costing money.
Oh yeah.
And they are not putting back into the bank account until this fall, assuming that we keep them alive. And so, like, I heard you lost a goat. If I lost a lamb, that's like $500 out of that account that I just died, So
absolutely.
That's something that I think it's hard to keep in mind. So how did you go from being like normal Joe, though, to homesteader? Like, what made you decide live off the land?
Oh, yeah. So you were talking about your walk to preparedness earlier. So I live here in Texas, close to the Gulf Coast. Hurricanes is what did it for me. Hurricanes and all the lovely crap that goes along with not being able to get anything, sprinklers on motion sensors. I love that. Anyway, so I actually I said I was in oil and gas. Being behind a computer, sitting in a cubicle is super boring. I found TED Talks and then found Audible and started listening to, of all the things, post-apocalyptic fiction. So the first book that I got on Audible was Hatchet by Gary Paulson, and because it was a book that I had read when I was a kid, and so I started listening to other books and stuff like that, and I found this guy named Glenn Tate, and he wrote this like 12-book series called 299 Days.
Yeah.
And in the first book, the main character basically slacks the crappy house in this nice house, but crappy living situation in the city, nice car, all this stuff, and he was basically writing an autobiography of me, minus all the post-apocalyptic fiction that happens later on or whatever.
Right.
So in the first book, he talks about some dude on the survival podcast talking about copy canning and how to lay in a deep pantry. So I start listening to the survival podcast. I'm like, wow, this guy sounds like a bad DJ at a strip club, but he's got a lot of really good points. And so my next step was obviously way deeper down the rabbit hole I started listening to Alex Jones and went way off the deep end for a long
Oops.
time.
Oops.
Doomsday Preppers, that TV show.
Mm-hmm.
So then after that, I would introduce myself as, hey, I'm a prepper, but not the crazy stuff like you see on the TV, just like normal stuff, like keeping a nice pantry. And like I said, I've grown to really resent that term. So we were living in the house in the city. We had a 2-story house, keyhole slot on a cul-de-sac, uh, about 10 miles from my office. And it was just miserable, man. I wasn't sleeping at night. I was taking stuff to stay awake. I was taking stuff to go to sleep. I was sitting behind the bushes in my front yard, in my garden, and with a shotgun because people would steal the storm drain covers off of the gutters just to recycle them for scrap.
Whoa.
Um, the car I'm sitting in, I had 2 of the windows shot out. Multiple cars broken into in my driveway, and I'm just like, you know what? This is no place to live. I spent $250,000 on this house. You'd think I'd be able to get a little bit of peace and tranquility, and no. Yeah, it just made us a target.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought a piece of property at 23 and 24 years old. We cashed out our 401ks. Every single person in our family told us we were making a mistake. We put everything down on, well, we put half of it on paying off our high interest auto loans. So we had some room to breathe and we could afford a monthly payment. And then we put the rest on a piece of property. That property is where we live now. It's our homestead. It took us almost 5 years just to get there,
Really?
and that was selling a house. So we couldn't sell the house that we were in the city, the 2-story. We couldn't sell it at a $30,000 loss because of the downturn in the housing market. So we rented it for 3 years, ended up selling it for about a $30,000 profit. And yeah, so we rented the house, rented a house to somebody, and then we had 2 mortgages and a rent note at one
Oh
time
no.
just to get to the quote unquote promised land.
Yeah.
We wanted to be on our property and be homesteaders really, really bad. So eventually we did what we had to do, made the steps to get there. When we took all the proceeds from selling that house eventually and took the equity in the property and gambled everything again during a downturn in oil and gas, and built a house, had a well put in, and just said to hell with it. We're gonna stake our claim here. We're gonna live here, and if we can't make it, then to hell with it. We'll sell everything. So yeah, and now it's like when I look at a concept for preparedness, I look at it from a standpoint of what is it going to take me to set up, and then how can I sustain this long term. So
Yeah.
it's and that in itself unfolds hours and hours of discussion. But I there was a point in my life, like when I was living in that house, when I didn't even change the oil on my own car, and now like I do motor swaps and transmission replacements, and I have a list of clients whose car I fix, just to bring in extra money or whatever. And it's just I tried to do a lot of stuff at once on my path to preparedness,
Mm-hmm.
and it pretty much ended in abject failure. So I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna have to take on one thing at a time. I can't add 5 different animal systems and then try and learn how to fix cars and try and learn how to fix my own house all
Yeah.
at once, because I'm
Yeah.
gonna fail at everything. So yeah, man, I'm a normal guy from Texas, and I just refuse to just lay down and die. I refuse to let somebody take advantage of me financially when I'm in a position of need. So that pretty much, it leads to preparedness mindset. Whether or not people realize it's a preparedness mindset, it's, being self-sufficient, self-reliant is not something that's common these days.
So I
So,
can make money, right?
mhm,
In many different ways.
sure,
And if my money income spigot just turns off, right? I can make money.
right. Same for me.
If I have a deep pantry or a bank account from which to pull from, money food, supplies, all of those things, when shitty opportunities come up, I can say no.
Yep.
And I can be making money in a lot of just side hustly gig ways if I have to. That's how I made my transition when I said screw you to what I was doing before.
Right.
It was just like, I'll try a bunch of little things and see what shakes out, because and I don't have to go take a crummy job somewhere else because I have this stability. I think that's something when people talk crap about preppers or homesteaders, that's the thing they don't realize. Like, it's a lot of work. I was out weeding in my garden at 7 o'clock last night, but it's also a place of power. What else was I going to do at 7? Like sit around and watch TV?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I
So for
love the
me,
lifestyle.
I do. I mean, it's a pain in the ass, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. But for me, it's like, I've never really prepared for, people are like, oh, well, I'm preparing for the, nuclear holocaust, or I'm preparing for, the complete breakdown of the financial system. I'm like, I'm preparing for hurricanes and job loss. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, preparing for hurricanes and job loss goes a long way to preparing you for that other crazy crap that, you're trying to prepare for. It's, devastating, but statistically likely not to happen. So I tell people, I'm like, look, just you prepare intentionally, make your choices intentionally, and prepare for something that's realistic, like job loss or something like that, and then add the other stuff that makes you feel better. But it's and then there's I'll tell people straight up honestly, like there's things that you can't prepare for. And a lot of my circles, and even Oxman, like he says, Texas Joe is the most prepared guy. Like he's the super prepper, like he's the most prepared guy I know. But I'm 37, and last October I had a widowmaker heart attack, and there wasn't no preparing for that.
No.
Straight up. So
Liver
I was
transplant. You're not preparing for that.
no, you're not, but it helps when something like that comes up, and you don't have to worry about, you know, 2 months of how your family's going to eat because you can't work,
Yeah.
like at least with a deep pantry, I don't have to worry about feeding my family, at least with a deep pantry, I can worry about finding another job or something to sustain me between this job and the next job. And I don't have to worry about the bills because we have savings. I don't have to worry about, the car breaking down because we've got some crappy cars and we got some good cars, but we're not going to be without a car.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about the family eating because I got a deep pantry. So they're all, in my mind, they're all savings accounts. So I got a car savings account, or I've got other crappy cars to drive, so I can always go make a living. I've got, an income, so I've got a liquid savings account, like a cash account. We've got a food savings account, and then I've got leverageable skills, which are basically an account that I can just go and draw on and tap on at any time, so I can make money.
Mm-hmm.
So it may not be a lot of money, because for me to leave my house for oil and gas, you ain't getting me out of my house for less than $55 to $60 an hour.
Yeah.
And I tell them that straight up, and they're like, "Well, that's a lot. You're going to have to negotiate." I'm like, "I don't have to negotiate."
No, I could say no. That's my negotiation.
Right. No, exactly. So, yeah, like I'm in a position where I need the job or whatever, but you're not going to take advantage of me. So,
yeah, and it's funny how that works. I guess oil and gas crashed right now because of the
it's everything is depressed right now. It's just
counterintuitive to me, because it's like gas is so expensive right now, and then oil and gas has crashed again. And then the price comes down, and it seems like prosperity goes up in the industry.
yeah.
Why
So
is
nobody hate me right now for being an oil and gas employee, because I have no influence on the gas price.
Yeah, that's anybody who's mad at you about that's just mad.
Yeah, just be mad. I can't do anything about that. Just go ahead on and be mad
about them. Yeah.
So, but no, it's so for my end, we need to have new construction. We need to have new capex. So we need capital expenditures out in the market. Um, I'm showing my face on an interview. I'm a CAD designer by profession, and I have 15 years in the industry, and I can leverage my skills to go design other things like homesteads and car dealerships or what, new home neighborhoods or whatever. But the oil and gas is where the money's at. The
Yeah.
most addictive drug in the world is not fentanyl or meth or cocaine or any of that. It's money, and lives are bought and sold on Wall Street every single day. And I'm no exception. I've got a 10-acre farm here in Texas with a brand new house and a mortgage that's over $250,000. And so I'm addicted to money, and I'm man enough to tell everybody that.
Yeah, you
So,
got to keep those. You don't want to lose that, right?
right. But I'm also a workaholic. So even if I have a full-time job, I'm still, I've got a executive protection, high-end executive protection career. I work on cars. I'm also a bartender. Like I love money and I love being around people. So
Hmm. Wow.
hustle is just, it's like a light switch. Like I get up in the morning and I'm either hustling or I'm sleeping. So
Yeah. That's funny. I am the kind of person that I hustle until I shut down, and I shut down like a robot. I'm like,
yep,
"Boop." My battery
yep,
just went out, and then I'm out.
yep. Family's
Yeah.
like, hey, let's watch a movie. I'm like, awesome. This is a great.
Uh, have you seen that movie? Well, I slept through it, so I guess I heard it in
Yeah,
the background.
I'm gonna have to watch that again.
I think so. I like the series Bosch on Amazon, and I
Okay.
think it might be season 2. The last 3 episodes I slept through. I have no idea what happened. I never went back and fixed that. I was like, whatever. I slept. It
So I
is
feel
what
like
it is.
I feel like I do a disservice to most of my friends because I'm not super big on sitting in front of the TV unless it's like Simpsons or or
Yeah,
Futurama or something like that.
yeah,
And even then, it's like I cannot stand to sit still. I'm thinking about all of the things on the homestead that need attention and how I'd rather be drinking a beer now that I shouldn't really drink beer, but drinking a beer in my garden under the Edison lights or something like that.
yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like I just can't shut my mind off.
So you
I'm the
weathered
busiest
a
person.
life-altering heart attack and you're back. You had to completely
Yes.
change much of your lifestyle as a result?
Yeah, I did. So, like I said, I'm 37. I had a heart attack last October after getting laid off from oil and gas.
Yeah,
I was 100% committed to doing my homesteading event remotely. So we took
yeah,
it to Virginia at the request and behest of my Mid-Atlantic crew. So
yeah,
we went to Virginia. I loved it. Appalachia, man, they showed us their soul and they treated us like family.
yeah.
I get back from that, and I had what I thought was really bad heartburn
Oh,
for like
no.
2 weeks. And I'm going to apologize if I get emotional in the middle of this, but come back, thought I had really bad heartburn, said to hell with it, put my body armor on and my duty belt, and went patrolling. And inside that stupid Ren Fair that I talked about earlier.
Yeah, yeah,
So patrolled 14 miles on foot, and 2 days later, I was working with Pat in the garage on somebody's car, and I'm like, man, this heartburn's ridiculous, bro. I'm gonna go to the doctor tomorrow, which is what I said for about a week and a half.
yeah,
And then 4:30 the next morning, God pulled my card, and I didn't think I was gonna make it. And
yeah.
my wife took me to the hospital, and they're like, "You're having a heart attack," and I said, "Yeah, can we cuss on your show?"
Yeah, yeah.
I told them to go fuck themselves. That I was 37, I wasn't having a heart attack. And they're like, we might need to put stents. I'm like, again, you must not have heard me the first time. Go fuck yourself, because I'm
Yeah,
37. They're like, we'll be that as it may. We're going to keep you for observation. So they moved me to a room, and I started to have a heart attack, and the entire team, nursing staff, and everybody freaked out. And I'm like, man, what are you guys freaking out for? And they're like, you're having a heart attack. I'm like, no, I'm not. No,
yeah.
I'm not. So they put all this stuff on me and everything. And for the full story, like you can check out a heart reset on my podcast. But
Mhm.
they hook me up, they take me down, and it wasn't real for me until they, told me to say bye to my wife. And I looked at her, told her she was the best decision I ever made in my entire life, and to tell the kids I love them. And then when
Mhm.
she turned around, I fell apart, and I begged God for my life like I'd
Mhm.
never done before. So since then, I was told that if it tastes good when I put it in my mouth, it's going to kill me.
Mhm.
Um, so I stopped drinking coffee and Monster cold turkey. I stopped eating a lot of stuff cold turkey. Pretty much went, rabbit food and chicken or fish. Um, I've lost 40 something pounds, and I went from taking no medication a day to taking like 6 or 7 medications a day, and I have to take them or it'll kill me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a devastating blow to a prepper. Hopefully with turning around my lifestyle and trying to fix everything,
Yeah.
I can get off the meds here pretty quick. But it's once you have a widowmaker heart attack and you've got stents in your heart, it's like eventually, like I know how I'm gonna die,
Yeah.
right? Like I know that eventually it's those cold hands of death that I felt hug me in October. They're gonna come for me again, and it's probably gonna be a heart attack, because
Mm-hmm.
my chances of having another one are exponentially up. But at least I can not be a diabetic or you know cause any kind of other issues, and by living a crappy lifestyle. So I try and live a clean lifestyle now. So
So how has that
and
changed your perspective on every day? Like, how do you approach every day differently now?
I don't approach it any differently,
Okay.
because if I go, I want my preparedness plan to still work out for my family.
Mm-hmm.
So I still practice what I preach. I still prep, and I just, now I try and buy as much medication and save as much medication as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I prophesize to my family and my friends and people on my show to, say I love you whenever you feel it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as my preparedness, I haven't slowed down a bit, because my plan was my plan for my family, and it still is.
Right. Well,
So,
that makes sense. That makes sense.
but I don't.
Um,
I mean, we have bricks of toilet paper, but toilet paper's for trading. I'm a wet wipe fan.
I mean, whatever. It's like in many bathrooms, right next to the toilets, a shower or a bathtub.
Yeah,
And I'm like, problem
yeah.
solved. It's like
There was life
literally the
before toilet
problem is
paper.
solved.
There were thousands of years of life before toilet paper.
Yeah, yeah.
So
We sprinkle
I don't
Mullins
know
deep
why.
around here.
I don't know why podcasts always deviate to poop talk.
I know because it's a thing. Well, it's funny because a lot of people prepare with food and then they prepare with first aid and then they prepare with bullets and training and they think they're good and they haven't thought about how am I keeping the power on? How am I getting from point
Right.
A to point B? If if plumbing stops, like that's a huge sanitation problem if you don't have a plan. We have a plan that's
Absolutely.
being used right now because Tactical's toilet's broken and he hasn't fixed his toilet yet in 2 weeks. You know why he hasn't? Because it's too easy to just go use the outhouse outside. That's a composting outhouse and he's been really busy with the sheep. So he's like,
Yep.
whatever, I can walk outside.
Yep.
It's not cold out yet. So yeah, having that backup plan is great. And I know some people who during the Texas, that the winter before last when people lost
Oh, the
power and it was
blizzard.
like cold as hell out there. Um,
Yeah.
two of my friends live in an apartment in Dallas, and they just had a baby, so they had a newborn. But and the water stopped next, right? In
Yep.
their closet, they had a 5-gallon bucket and wood chips, and that's what they used. And they said, they were really glad they had that because they had to use it 4 days because they did not have plumbing or the ability to flush 4 days. And because they thought about it, they're like, we didn't have a smelly problem. Like everything was cool. Yeah.
I'm glad you bring up smell, because as a homesteader and somebody who prophesizes about the homestead lifestyle and doing the homestead clinics and workshops and stuff, everybody wants to be a homesteader until their nose meets the reality of a homestead.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So you
Yeah.
might you might think that's a good idea for your preparedness plan, but why don't you go ahead and run that once or twice and see how your family deals with it, because it's not just your plan,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. You can't
So
do it by yourself. It's funny because
oh
I'm
no,
I'm single, so I'm doing it by myself, right?
right.
I'm not doing it by myself. I have a guest cabin rented to somebody else who's also single who's doing it by himself. And I was thinking about that yesterday. We have totally divided up who does what here just naturally by wanting
Absolutely.
this lifestyle. And I'm cooking dinner and he was out dealing with sheep. I'm like, I basically am in a weird feminine domestic role right now because he'll just forget to cook.
Yep.
And so at some point every day, I'm like, I need to stop and cook dinner or dinner is going to be at 10 p.m.
Yeah, that's the other thing about homesteading. You're always eating at like 10, 11, 12, sometimes not, because you got an animal dying. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Grumpy Acres says, Texas Joe, get out of my head. I survived 2 heart attacks and you are approaching it like we have. Respect.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So like I said, I talked about this on my show, and I basically went through the whole experience emotionally and everything. And the episode called A Heart Reset,
Yeah.
and the outpouring of support from my community and other people, like people started sharing that, and they're like, look, I really want you to go to the doctor, you know, and that's like, I couldn't be happier than that. Like people actually shared that with their family and their friends. And then those people reach out to me and they're like, hey, my friend shared this with me because I've been struggling with some health issues. And,
Yeah.
it gave me the motivation I needed to go to the doctor. So
yeah, I can tell
funny
you
how,
losing weight makes a huge difference in your outlook on life too, and energy
oh
levels.
yeah. You know how good I sleep now that I'm not drinking a dozen beers a day?
That's
Like
great.
I had a serious problem and I didn't realize it was a serious problem. And it's not that I was like an alcoholic per se. I just really enjoy craft beer.
Yeah.
And it was to the point where I did have a bit of an addiction. And
Yeah.
I just, I looked at it and now my wife's like, I don't know how I dealt with your ass for so long. Because it was, I mean, I'm still a pain in the ass for my wife. I mean, that's not
You
going to
always
change.
will be.
Yeah. So,
That's how
but yeah,
relationships work, right?
I mean, hey, it's give and take, and I give her a lot of shit
Yeah.
sometimes, but she took me. So here's the give and take. I gave her a lot of shit, and I still do, but she took me to the emergency room so I didn't die from a heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah. That must
So
mean she likes you and wants you to stay around or something.
yeah, I know, and she's a saint for it because God knows why. I'm a really hard person to love. So
Yeah, you say that. I think everybody is.
so
We all have different sides of our personalities, and that is, what it is.
we're all a
Yeah.
little broken here.
Yeah, well, it's also like I think about it, like being with me is hard because I'm really intense a lot. And if you can't
Me
get
too.
away from me, then that's just like up in your face, man. That is up in your
Yeah,
face. And there's nothing
yes.
you're gonna and I can't hide it. Like I used to hide it when I was a teenager and you get in these relationships and then you'd be like, okay, this is how I really am. That's totally unfair to do to somebody.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise, I'm really intense. Now I'm like, I'm just
Yeah,
gonna be intense, and if you don't like it, you can go away. That is the
yeah,
way it is. So
yeah. That's where people so like we have I do the events. I've mentioned it. I do the events like you do for Living Free in Tennessee, and people are like, I expected you to be intense because of how you talk on the show. And they're like, but I was surprised at how intense of a person you are. Like I was surprised to meet you in person. Like you're exactly what I thought you'd be, and you're exactly what you claim to be and say to be on the show. But wow, the intensity in your eyes is something, it's a force of nature to see
scary.
in person. Yeah. Yeah. They're like, you're an intimidating person, not because like I think you're gonna hurt me, just because I think that you might be slightly crazy. I'm like, oh yeah, I own that shit. It's
Oh, how are
yeah.
we not all crazy, man? How are we not all crazy?
Right.
All right. Well,
So
tell me about the Freedom and Farmsteading workshop. Like, what's that all about? What made you want to do it? What can people expect? When is it going to be? All of those things.
okay, so Freedom and Farmsteading is it was actually it was born from an episode Uncle Jack did, and he was like, stop talking shit, and if you're gonna do an event, do an event. So I did it, and I actually reached out to you at one point, was like, hey, do you have a checklist? I reached out to Uncle Jack. I'm like, hey, do you have a checklist? And both y'all said no, be a big boy and pull your pants up and just get it done. So
Yeah.
it's a lot in the same vein as Living Free in Tennessee. It's a lot of in the same vein of the TSP. We're a few miles south of Jack, but we have our own flair. My wife is a huge part of the planning, and the women around the spouses and everybody is their family's a big thing, so they insist on very, very nice bathroom trailers. So we always have a super nice air conditioned bathroom trailer at every event. We always have live music. We pull out no stops. I haven't been profitable on this. I've done it 3 times. I haven't been profitable once because I insist on everything we make going back into making the experience amazing. So the food is amazing. We always have live music. This past time, we had a guy named Tyler Tillman come with his fiddle player, Brandon, And I swear I'll never hear Hurricane or what was the other, Simple Man, or She's Like Texas. I'll never hear them done right again. Even if the original artist who recorded them does them, I'll never hear them right again. So
Right.
it's a lot of bonding. It's a lot of learning. It's a lot of fellowship. One of my favorite things about the events is the spontaneous affirmations of faith, because every single time we have an event, people are like, "Hey, this has made my faith stronger," you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so this last one, it was the Texas 22 event. It was the same weekend as Living Free in Tennessee and Float Fest. So, you know, I don't like to compete with my friends, but hey, this is a space where I'm going to
I
have to
mean,
reschedule.
it is what it is. There are people who may go to one or the other, but we are
Yeah,
rather far apart. So,
we are, we are
I mean, I've done an event the same weekend as Jackson. I sold out.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely will not do a same weekend as Jack or Float Fest again or
Yeah.
Childerberg or I mean I could just keep going.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a nice 10 acre homestead here and just what about an hour or so north of Houston.
Yeah.
Um, I'm always going to shoot for April for my events.
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to schedule it the same weekend as other stuff, but it's always going to be in April because the bluebonnets are out. It's the most beautiful time in Texas. Um, so yeah, it's what am I missing here?
I don't know. So you haven't scheduled it for 23 yet, but if people want to know when it is, how do they find out?
Just listen to the show. I've got my website in process for being built. The couple iterations that we've had websites, they just weren't right. So you can keep up with everything. We have two Instagram handles. I've got IKC Podcast and then Freedom and Farmsteading, which is the name of the event.
Mm-hmm.
So Freedom and Farmsteading channel, all of our communication will go out, schedule, dates, when seats go on sale. All of our presenters who have committed to us for the event will be labeled there. So aside from that, if you're interested, listen to the show. You can email me info@IKC Podcast, and I'd start blasting out stuff to everybody who's either RSVP'd or bought a seat or expressed interest, and I just set up little email lists, and then I contact you via text message and stuff like that to plan, and we go from there. I've got everything but the freaking website. I just need to get off my ass and get the website done.
I know that feeling.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So I told you. So guys, definitely check out this event, especially if you can get there easily. Texas and Louisiana, I'm looking at you.
we had a couple come from Pennsylvania
I mean, I
to
get
Texas 22.
people from New York and the West Coast all the time. I got somebody from Canada this time. Um,
Nice.
yeah. So it's people will come from far, but you'll get more people from close by. And these events, a lot. I see a lot of events getting up off the ground. I think there may be another regional one in the Midwest that eventually comes to be. That's like that same model of spending days together, working on our personal improvement, working on our business prowess, learning homesteading skills or sharing best practices. And then the more important thing, talking to each other, eating good food, drinking good drink if you drink, not drinking good drink if you don't drink, whatever, singing karaoke, live music, whatever it is you do. That time with other people that share interests in homesteading and growing food and taking control of your life it's like wind that makes you fly faster, I think.
Absolutely.
It's not just what you learn there and the relationships you get, it's the motivation you leave these things with. And I think that's why so many of these kinds of events are just not only springing up everywhere, but successfully springing up. You're like, can we do one more homesteading event? Yes, we can. Especially
Absolutely.
now, you got the president coming out talking about food shortages. Suddenly, everybody wants to raise animals and vegetables. Like, done.
Baker
Okay, let's
Creek's not
tap
going to
into
have any
that.
seeds again.
Yeah, Liberty Seeds. Woo!
Yep.
Yeah. Have
Oh,
you
speaking
seen
of seeds,
the free range events site? By the way,
I haven't.
yeah. So definitely look at free range events to see who else is doing things. That will help you understand not everybody puts their stuff there, but it's been a good resource. And I think if more of us use that, then we'll know if we're all scheduling the same thing on the same weekend.
Okay. So I have to
in
get on that
April.
site and use it.
Yeah, something like that. I haven't gotten mine on there for 23 yet, but it is the last weekend of April every year. I just like locked to that weekend, and I was like, everybody else can like talk to the hand at that point. I've just decided. You'll get that. You'll be like, it's the second week of April every time. My problem is Easter hits in April, and then Easter gets in your way mid-April.
Yep.
You end up having.
I may just stake my claim on the weekend after Easter because I can't compete with Easter. I'm not even going to try. It'd be sacrilegious. But hey, on the seed thing, you just mentioned seeds. One of the things that we do at every event is a spontaneous seed swap. So we'll divvy up 1,000 seeds, packages of seeds between all the attendees, and we set up barter tables. And we still do barter, blanket around the fire or whatever, but we set aside a block just for a seed swap.
Fun.
So it's a great time.
Yeah, sharing seeds is a great way to keep your genetics going too. If you got something good.
I've fostered Asian long beans all the way out to Pennsylvania and I think Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So I hope they do well. So, yeah.
You'll see. You'll see. Come to think of it, I haven't planted my noodle beans yet.
I'll mail you some Asian long beans. I always say, if I have a garden, I won't have a garden unless I have Asian long beans. Even if I have to plant them along a stupid fence in suburbia, if I have to go back, I'm still going to have those damn Asian long beans no matter what.
Yeah. I haven't put any vining beans in yet this year because it's been a thing this year. But we redid all the things, and some of the things are not done being redone. But I can totally put
I'm struggling with squash right now. Like it came up, flowered huge, made one squash, and it's like... So
squash vine borers would be my guess.
Probably.
That's what gets me every year.
Probably.
You make really good ones in Texas, by the way. Really robust squash vine borers.
Yeah. Normally I get at least a 5-gallon bucket full of squash, but this year just not happening.
Yeah, one year I put my squash in really early and we didn't get a late frost, and I got them in before the squash vine borers and then they died. One year I was late, and this year is that year again. I got them after the wave came through, and I actually ended up with a pretty good squash year. Other than that, I've been here 15 years. I've only had 2 good squash years because of those little buggers. Yeah. I hate them.
And see, that's a testament to us as homesteaders. We're so stubborn. We're just gonna keep trying that. We're gonna keep trying that shit. It doesn't matter if we fail. Like we're gonna eventually we're gonna get it.
Eventually I'm gonna have a good squash year again. It's gonna be epic. Well, and then you do research on them. You're like, why hasn't anybody figured out how to deal with these? And then you read the extension office's recommendations is to just plant a bigger field of them because they'll only get about 10%. The problem is when you have 5 plants, they get all 5 plants.
Right. So. And I could just be satisfied with growing amazing tomatoes and amazing peppers and being the envy of everybody on Instagram, but I want those stupid squash.
I know they're so good. Like, they're really good with the peppers. I'm just saying. Awesome. Okay, well, we're coming in on an hour here. Anything we should cover that I haven't covered? Like, how do people get in touch with you? What do you want to say to my audience before we sign off?
Man, I just want to say thanks for having me. It's wild for me to finally get on big shows like this because I've honestly been scared to do it. You know, I'm about to go on TSP, and it just, you know, I don't know why I'm nervous to talk to somebody who I've already met in person, you know, but I appreciate you guys being here and taking the time because, you know, when you realize that your time is limited and you're not Superman, like time becomes really important. So, I guess how you can get a hold of me, search for Insurgency Knitting Circle Podcast. We're on all of the major podcasting dissemination apps. Don't really do much on YouTube just because I don't have a lot of time to do much on YouTube. IKC Podcast on Instagram or Freedom and Farmsteading on Instagram. Otherwise, anybody can get a hold of me at any time, info@ikcpodcast.com. I answer all my emails. So.
Awesome. Well, I mean, guys, the Insurgency Knitting Circle podcast is a powerhouse of freedom thinkers. You definitely want to check it out if you are looking for podcasts to listen to. And I just want to thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sauce. I appreciate it.